Hello and welcome to another marvelous video. Today we will explore a fascinating comic book titled Darkseid vs. Galactus, The Hunger. The first such comic where we see superheroes of two different universes share the same space was way back in 1976 with Superman vs. Spider-Man. However, we were told during that time that these superheroes are another version of the original narrative superheroes, just that they share the same universe amidst the vast multiverse. But over the years, both DC and Marvel have made the silent switch where these characters become separate entities with their own universes. Still not the main narrative character though. The reason I stress upon this is that since we are not sure about the characters belonging from the shared universe or separate ones, it keeps us comic fans more interested in the product. However, that part was definitely answered in this particular story, which you will find out in a minute. While Marvel's Galactus and DC's Darkseid are two of the most powerful entities in their own universes, Darkseid vs. Galactus, The Hunger, written and illustrated by John Byrne, finally addressed the question in 1995 as to who is stronger between the two. Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin. DC vs. Marvel, a battle between the cosmic gods. The story begins by showing the origins of two planets from the DC universe. Apokolips, led by the tyrant Darkseid, and its positive counterpart, New Genesis, where the new gods reside, led by his brother-in-law, Highfather. They appeared after the destruction of Urgrund, the world of the ancient gods. The universe of these renowned deities was separated into two distinct worlds, eternally linked, yet very different. While the living atoms of the old god Balder gave New Genesis vigor and dignity, an unidentified sorceress soaked Apokolips with evil. The two planets are eternally at odds, signifying the conflict between evil and virtue on a substantial epic scale. Let's briefly explore the new 52 origin story of Darkseid and the origin story of Galactus before we get into the story at hand to understand what is happening entirely. Darkseid, formerly known as Euxis in the planet Urgrund, was a mud grubber who detested the old gods and their give-and-take methods. Euxis's convulsions were caused by the fact that while not being a god himself, he was Yuga Khan's son. When the gods went to fight, a gravely wounded one asked Euxis to pray for him. Euxis, seeing his opportunity for grandeur, murdered the god and absorbed his power. Knowing that this murder would not go unpunished, Euxis began slaughtering a number of the old gods. The entity known as Euxis was forgotten for this act of treason, and Darkseid was riding on his steed. However, the old god's demise caused Darkseid's sister Avia to die away, and the final old god transferred his authority to Darkseid's brother-in-law, Isaiah. Darkseid and Isaiah joined forces to establish the new gods, but Darkseid's disdain for his old companion caused him to go on the prowl over the globe. This allowed Darkseid to build Apokolips over his previous planet of origin, a realm where each soul kept watch on its step and supplied the machinery that kept the world alive. When Apokolips and Isaiah's new planet, New Genesis, came into contact, they engaged in a violent conflict that put both of them in danger of extinction. Isaiah built New Genesis as a shelter for the new gods who would support the good because he did not want there to be any more turmoil in the universe. Darkseid had two children in Apokolips, Scott and Kalibak, the first of whom he acquired through a peace agreement with Isaiah in exchange for Orion at Metron's suggestion. This trade put an end to Apokolips's and New Genesis's protracted conflict. Galactus's beginnings are relatively simpler to understand. Galen, an early explorer from the planet Tar, was who he was before he became Galactus. Before the current universe began, the planet Tar existed in a previous universe. Due to a cosmos-wide catastrophe, Galen and several others tried to get away from Tar. Unfortunately, during their failed attempt to evacuate, the spacecraft carrying Galen was obliterated by what can only be described as the end of the universe. The cataclysmic catastrophe, or the Big Crunch, precipitated the Marvel Universe's demise and rebirth, that is the Big Bang. Galen survived the occurrence, in contrast to the bulk of the universe. This occurred after he fused with the sentience of the universe. For comparison, the sentience of the universe served as this universe's representation of life, just as eternity does in the brand new universe. Galen underwent a sequence of alterations after establishing touch with the sentience of the universe. These modifications took place through billions of years. After it was finished, Galen, now known as Galactus, emerged in the new universe. He looked for a neighboring planet to eat since he was starving. Archaeopia would become known as the first of many worlds that Galactus swallowed in order to survive. After devouring Archaeopia, Galactus started building a spacecraft. In honor of his previous residence, the ship Tar-2 was constructed. Galactus realizes he cannot keep fighting and looking for worlds to eat after engaging in and triumphing in innumerable wars. As a result, he builds a herald whose job is to look for planets for him to feed on. His third try was anything but unsuccessful, even though his first two attempts were. Norrin Radd consents to take on the role of the third herald of Galactus in exchange for the defense and preservation of his homeworld Zen-La. Radd, now known as the Silver Surfer, served Galactus for many years. In fact, this story is set in a timeline where Galactus is mind-controlling Silver Surfer as his master. Coming back to this story now, like many other crossovers of that period, Darkseid vs. Galactus presume that the two share a universe. Galactus does not utilize a portal to enter the DC universe, and Darkseid does not invade Marvel's reality. In this reality where both exist, the new gods of New Genesis get a word from the Source to hide their planet in order to avoid detection by Galactus. The Source is a metaphysical concept in the DC universe. The Source is the non-religious counterpart to Buddha nature, Purusha or the presence. It may be seen as the awareness of the DC universe. It is the origin of everything. The Source, primarily connected to the new gods, was thought to be the starting point of the God Wave, which is said to have given rise to and endowed the DC universe's gods with their supernatural powers. So, the High Father orders a new god superhero named Light Ray to hide the planet. Light Ray, with his powers, hid New Genesis in such a way that it looked like a star, and Galactus had no interest in stars because they are unconsumable. On the other hand, Apocalypse does not do the same before the Silver Surfer discovers the world. As I mentioned earlier, in this version, we see Surfer not remembering anything from his past and being brainwashed by Galactus and serving him as his herald. As he reaches Apocalypse, the Surfer is swiftly attacked by Darkseid's Parademon troops. However, none of the Parademon's powers match the Silver Surfer's cosmic power, with the Surfer finally calling his master to Apocalypse. When Galactus arrives, he is surrounded by Apocalypse's soldiers, who do little to hurt or even slow him down. Darkseid then uses his abilities to cause Apocalypse to rise up and strike Galactus, knocking the gargantuan Marvel cosmic figure off his feet. The Silver Surfer swiftly arrives at his aid, hastening Galactus' absorption of Apocalypse. From New Genesis, thinking that just watching this is dishonorable, Orion, the second son of Darkseid, intervenes and confronts Silver Surfer, who puts up an unexpectedly formidable fight. I mentioned Orion, remember? In an effort to make peace between New Genesis and Apocalypse, Orion was exchanged as a kid for scot-free with New Genesis. He was trained to suppress his fury and anger while growing up as High Father Isaiah's son, which helped him become the most potent warrior either planet has ever seen. Given that his ancestry simmered with the anger of the vicious and merciless Darkseid, this was not a simple feat in and of itself. Orion spent most of his adolescence learning how to manage his evil nature, but as he grew, his companions among the new gods, especially Light Ray, helped him contain his rage. Although the Surfer almost kills Orion, he has his full memories of his home world restored, setting him up to betray Galactus later and force Galactus to bury the memories again. Galactus confronts Darkseid about the battle he's waged against him, and Darkseid, recognizing that Galactus is mighty but not invincible, blasts him with his Omega Effect in a bid to wipe him out. Darkseid's Omega Effect is an optical power manifested as Omega beams that can instantaneously change directions as the target moves, making it virtually impossible to avoid the beams, since the beams pursue their target even as it moves. The effect of these beams varies, but Darkseid may use this power to relocate his targets or completely obliterate them from the cosmos. Not surprisingly, the Omega effect has no actual impact on Galactus, allowing him to finish building his magnificent and awful machine, which would destroy the whole planet. When he activates it, however, Galactus is dismayed to discover Apocalypse has no more life energy for him to devour. In essence, Darkseid sent legions of his warriors to perish at the hands of Galactus for nothing. Darkseid claims that he had no choice but to do it since it was his true nature, and that, like Galactus, he cannot stop himself from achieving his cosmic destiny. In the end, Galactus leaves in rage, and interestingly, Darkseid does not inform him about New Genesis, choosing to destroy that world with his own two hands rather than let Galactus claim the honor of destroying that world. Marvelous verdict. For many years, comic fans have longed to see Darkseid vs Galactus in a no-holds-barred confrontation. Byrne delivered, Galactus trampling out parademons, Darkseid striking him with Omega beams, and the Silver Surfer stuck in the midst. Pretty much everything was there. Although a confrontation between Darkseid and Galactus seems like fun, it really highlights how inferior this version of Darkseid is. Galactus is a powerful being who has dragged entire armies of heroes into fighting with him to quell his destructive appetite. Galactus can destroy whole worlds with his own strength, while Darkseid is a powerful entity, but characters like Superman and Orion have already defeated him. Fans accustomed with watching Darkseid defeat his adversaries swiftly may be shocked to learn that Galactus tore through his realm with such ease and only departed because there was nothing else for him to do. Indeed, Darkseid, Darkseid, and the others would have perished if there had even been a hint of life on Apocalypse. They both stand for natural forces in their respective realms, but in the end, Galactus will always be too much for Darkseid. The ultra-powerful Darkseid, presented in the closing pages of Infinite Frontier No. 0, could have posed a more significant threat to Galactus than the post-crisis version of Darkseid, but the latter simply couldn't compete with Marvel's World Devourer. And if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one and be safe. Thanks everyone.